The whole city has the potential of becoming a vast light-based stage with a variety of visual dramas being enacted out each night. We would start to view the city differently, perhaps congregating briefly for an enactment before moving on to our destination, or sharing in the next local visual drama. In much the same way as young people have used LEDs to create temporary graffiti in New York by throwing magnetized LEDs, called throwies, onto metal structures, there has been a recent trend towards what is termed guerrilla lighting, whereby a few lighting specialists take to the streets with a small stock of luminaires, which they hang, lean, stand and focus to produce a temporary, transformative installation, which lasts a few hours until everyone packs up to go home. Surely there's scope for some sponsored versions of such transformations. We could open up areas of the city we are anxious in, or draw attention to an area which has been allowed to run down, or, alternatively, exalt in an area that is beautiful or elegant, but may not be widely appreciated. I strongly believe that giving careful consideration to the illumination of our cities and streets with a sustainable objective need not result in an impoverishment of our lit spaces, but could actually open a way to an enrichment of so many of the spaces we tend to take for granted. A thoughtful and creative consideration could allow for a far more dynamic sense of the city than we currently accept, and could easily save substantial sums of money and energy while simultaneously generating income and a more active nightlife. In theory, it won't be long before there will be electrical charging points around the city to recharge the electric cars many of us will be driving. Are there possibilities for temporary use of such sites as sources to power light installations? What can we say about the lighting of the cities we do have? How do we wish our cities to be seen at night? Should our grand buildings be lit and our homelier structures ignored? What is being said metaphorically, bearing in mind Joseph Rickvert's comments, when we flood a grand building with frontal light? In my view, we're often in danger of making our streets and the particularly grand structures that line them look unnecessarily like stage sets, flats with no sense of an interior life within them. They become bright masks that give little credence to the depth of space occupied, or the qualities of existence that take place within them, or even the weight of substance with which they are formed. Is it possible that light can give some sense of the possibilities of the above? After all, it's just light. As mentioned earlier, most of our perception is through our eyes, and at night we pick up a variety of signals about the world around us, predominantly through the illumination of the space we're in. Subtle signals of power, permanence, wealth or otherwise, are all transmitted through the architecture we live amongst, and how those spaces are lit. As suggested earlier, a building without windows or openings onto a street can be thought to be menacing. It appears to be a blind building that wishes to conceal its dark inner life. A government that wished to be thought of as open and democratic may want to consider, for example, how it illuminated its administrative spaces. Perhaps if we could glimpse at the grand ceilings or experience a sense of the deep space within, so that it appeared to emanate out towards us, rather than closing off our views and our imaginative engagement with the space, we would feel a greater sense of confidence that dark, deceptive deeds were not practiced internally. It may not truly change behavior, but it could change perception, which is a powerful first step. Some years ago, in the mid-90s, I believe, I was invited to collaborate with a youngish architect called Neil McLaughlin. We were brought together by RIBA, the Institute of British Architects, on Portland Place, on a blind date to develop a piece of work as they wished to explore the dynamics of collaborative endeavour. We were allocated a large room with handsome proportions overlooking the street. As we worked on developing ideas and coming to terms with the various restrictions imposed upon us, we realised that we wanted to slightly undercut the rather grand pomposity of the albeit handsome building. Whilst we were exchanging thoughts on the possibilities, Neil remembered a Blue Book guide to Florence that advised viewing a ceiling painting on the first floor in the French embassy at night by standing in the street and looking upwards through the first floor windows at the revealed painting. This thought led us to create mirrored wedges that were affixed to the ceiling, rather cleverly, not using any fixings that pierced the walls or ceilings, that allowed the passer-by in the street, if they cared to glance up, a reflected plan view of our floor-based installation in the room. We enjoyed the possibility of the engagement with the interior and the installation without the need to enter the building. There was a pleasing moment one evening when the director took the guests of a dinner party he was hosting for various grandees of the architecture world out of the building and stood them all in the road between the Chinese embassy and the Falun Gong protesters, instructing them to look upwards to behold the installation. I do think that such actions can have a potent symbolic charge in the game of perception and awareness as they change as we occupy our cities. The modern city is often trickier to read than cities in the relatively recent past. Lighting and signage can almost baffle or daze rather than clarify. It can dissolve the spaces we pass through, seeming to erase horizons or jump space, leaping in and out of consciousness as flashes of attention have swung first one way and then the other. I'm not saying that such dissolutions of space are intrinsically a bad thing in the city. In fact, substantial areas of my work are concerned with creating just such ambiguous spaces. I would like to talk a little about darkness or shadow. It seems to me that Americans in particular are rather afraid, or at least very wary of shadow. This may not be the place to consider exactly why, but it seems that Europeans, and the Japanese in particular, hold shadows as valuable aesthetic tools with which to enhance or give meaning to their spaces. Rather, as a veiled woman, Poppaea, one of Nero's mistresses, may be thought more desirable for the imagined, but not seen qualities of her face and body. So I believe the analogy of revelation and veiling may hold true for space. There is surely a seduction about that which we cannot take in with one glance. Our imagination is triggered and excited by what we cannot see, yet desire to do so. Shadow seems to me to be an intrinsic element of consideration in lighting. Absence of light allows us to appreciate its presence more. Perhaps as death is said to be the obverse side of the coin of life, so shadow is to light. It should be exploited more. This does not negate my earlier comments about revelation of interior space, and indeed both could mutually enhance one another. Let us allow space for the unknown, the slightly mysterious in our cities. Not every surface needs to be so dazzlingly lit there is little wonder or thrill. Not every surface, because apart from any other considerations, if every space was brightly illuminated, we would almost stop seeing them at all. And the only spaces that could hold fascination for us would be dark voids and shadowed zones neglected in between. I'm reaching the end, but wish to attempt some sort of summary. It seems to me most rules are there to be broken, or at least urgently questioned. And as an artist, I don't want to be thought of to be laying down blueprints of behavior for anyone else. However, it would be disingenuous of me to walk away leaving the impression that anything goes. Although deep down, I kind of believe that to be true. One strong guide surely must relate to context. What works wonderfully well in one situation will not perform the same way elsewhere. Cities are robust places and will stand much rough handling. But in times where every space can be a design exercise and edges are often buffed into extinction, I would encourage questioning of every presumption. Is this necessary or even desirable? Maybe every designer's mantra, if in doubt, leave it out, may be a useful answer to that mantra. Just because things have always been done in such a way, does that make it right? Surely some of the illumination regulations we are saddled with in the UK need re-examining. Embrace the technology. It may save us, and even if it doesn't, it will make the passing more interesting. Our cities are our future. How we build and illuminate them will partially define the people we are to become.